right. Well, it's 2 o'clock, and I'd like to welcome you all to our lecture today. We're very excited to have Gordon Daines speaking to us. I've got a formal introduction for him here that he's asked me to read, so I'll go ahead and do that up front. J. Gordon Daines III is the Research and Instruction Services Archivist and the Yellowstone National Park Collection Curator for the L. Tom Perry Special Collections at Brigham Young University. His research interests include primary source literacy, preserving digital records, finding aid design, business process management for archives, and the history of Yellowstone National Park. He's interested in the history of Brigham Young University and has written about Franklin S. Harris and Howard S. McDonald, which will be the subject of the lecture today. He's also the co-curator of the By Study and By Faith exhibit, which we'd encourage you, if you haven't had a chance to look at it, is the exhibit in Special Collections just outside of this auditorium, which will be open after the event. And with that introduction, maybe looking to the back to make sure that the technology is ready, we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Gordon. First, though, we've asked Jared McCart, Gordon's son-in-law, to offer an opening prayer for us.
Dearest Father in heaven, we're very grateful for the opportunity to learn from Gordon Daines. We're very grateful for a place that we can talk about religion, our faith in Thee, and how we can be effective leaders in a secular world. Please help us learn how we can balance it, and please bless us with Thy Spirit to forever retain the knowledge that we gain today. In the name of Jesus Christ, Amen.
Thank you for coming. I'm excited to give this lecture. I hope you find it interesting. I am fascinated by the ongoing efforts to balance the sacred and the secular at BYU. It's been something I've found interesting since I started working here. Brigham Young University was established in 1875 with the express purpose of intermingling the sacred and the secular. This has required regular effort on the part of the church and university leaders to ensure that the university offers the best of the secular world while staying strongly connected to its spiritual roots. This presentation examines how Franklin S. Harris worked to strengthen the academic structure of the university and how his successor, Howard S. McDonald, worked to strengthen the connection between BYU and the church. Franklin S. Harris was the first president of Brigham Young University to hold a doctoral degree, and he understood the need of the university to improve its faculty, the research opportunities for faculty and students, the physical facilities, laboratory equipment, and most of all, its library, before it could really be considered a college, let alone a university. The name had been changed in 1903, but there was still a lot of work to do. Early in his administration, Harris put together a plan to help the university meet its academic potential, and he focused on the value of getting the school accredited as a tool for doing so. A little about Franklin Harris. He began his academic career in earnest in 1903 at the age of 19, when he commenced high school work at the Brigham Young University. He completed his high school diploma in 1904. Wouldn't it be nice to complete your high school in 1 year? And he returned home to Colonial Juarez, Mexico, where he taught school for a year. In September of 1905, his passion for learning led him back to BYU, where he commenced his studies under the tutelage of Dr. John A. Widtsoe. His association with Dr. Widtsoe would mark the trajectory of his academic career and shows the importance of mentors. He completed his college studies at BYU in 1907 and followed Dr. Widtsoe to the Utah State Agricultural College in Logan. After teaching at the Agricultural College for a year, Harris took his new bride, Estelle Spilsbury, and they moved to Ithaca, New York, to pursue graduate work in agronomy at Cornell University. Upon completion of his degree, Harris returned to the Utah State Agricultural College as a professor of agronomy and an agronomist on the staff of the experiment station. And he quickly rose through the academic ranks and eventually served as director of both the School of Agricultural Engineering and the experiment station. In fact, he was considered for the presidency of the Agricultural College in 1916. His administrative skills and his close association with John Widtsoe were among the factors the General Church Board of Education considered when offering him the presidency of Brigham Young University. And I have to tell you that accepting the presidency of Brigham Young University was not an easy decision for Dr. Harris. He thoroughly enjoyed what he was doing at the Utah State Agricultural College, and he was comfortable with the career path that he was on. In many ways, he hoped to become president of the Agricultural College at some day in the future, and more on that a little later. More importantly, he was really concerned about the nature of BYU, particularly the number of high school students versus college students. The spoiler there is that there were more high school students than there were college students at the time they asked Harris to become president of the university. So Harris spent a lot of time consulting with people. He talked with Widtsoe and other trusted advisors until he felt comfortable that BYU had potential. It took him a week before he finally accepted the offer. Mind you, the offer to become president of the university had been extended to him by President Heber J. Grant. So I think there was a little bit of pressure there. He accepted on April 22nd, 1921. And then the BYU Board of Trustees unanimously approved his appointment on April 26, 1921, and set July 1st, 1921 as the date that the appointment would take effect. The board stated that they felt that they had the right man in the right place. It was a fortunate choice for BYU. Harris had gained a compelling vision of the university's potential in conversation with his mentors, and he was able to persuade others that that vision was practical and achievable. On Harris's first visit to campus, shortly after accepting the presidency, he stated, quote, "The president of the Church Commission of Education and all who have anything to do with the church schools are determined to make this the great church university." Harris's vision of what it meant to be the great church university differed from that of his predecessors. From its inception in 1875, BYU had focused on the training of teachers for the church's educational network. While Presidents Clough and Brimhall and the BYU Board of Trustees had envisioned the university as the primary institution of teacher training for the church, Harris had another purpose in mind. A purpose that would eventually give BYU a much more stable position in the church's educational network. He outlined what that purpose was during his first campus visit. He told the assembled student body, quote, "All Mormondom cannot be educated here, but I hope to see the time when 2 of a city and 2 of a county will come here to become leaders." In his mind, the purpose of the Great Church University was to equip students with the skills necessary to be leaders in whatever discipline or field they chose to study. By the time he was appointed president of BYU, Harris had come to the conclusion that leadership involved enabling individuals to reach their full potential in whatever they chose to do in life. Leadership involved teaching, but was much more than that. He explained, quote, "I believe that a person should do all that he can to spread education and promote industries and occupations that will tend to make humanity more free and give them a desire to live properly. I believe the gospel of Jesus Christ embraces all of these principles and is a perfect code of life." Harris spent the 24 years of his presidency working to enable BYU to produce students capable of becoming leaders in all disciplines. During May and June of 1921, Harris focused considerable attention on the refinement and implementation of the plan that he had developed. He consulted prominent Latter-day Saint scholars about how to improve scholarship on campus and how to implement an academic structure that would meet the needs of a growing university. Towards the end of May, Harris was ready to begin publicizing his plan, and he wrote an article in the student newspaper, The White and Blue. He explained the core of his vision for the university. It is impossible in a single institution to educate all the people of the church. Other agencies are available for the training of the great masses. What this particular university must aim to do is to train for leadership in its highest forms. Leadership in the church itself, leadership in social affairs, leadership in business, leadership in art, leadership in citizenship. In fact, leadership in all that will contribute to the betterment of the world and the happiness of its people. He then explained what steps needed to be taken to enable BYU to train for leadership. These steps included the need to have faculty whose scholarship was the best in the world, the creation of a great library, not just a good library, a great library, the establishment of a research division to aid the faculty in improving their scholarship, and the need for an extension division to be established in order to extend the reach of the university beyond itself. The extension division is the predecessor of our continuing education department. He explained that the growth of the university needed to be slow and steady so that it would be lasting. Harris had set a very, very high bar for the university to reach for, and it would take many years to realize all of the aspects of his vision for BYU. And in fact, I think we're still reaching for some of those aspirations. Harris spent the next several years working vigorously to improve the qualifications of Brigham Young University. Beginning in 1922, Harris reorganized the academic structure of the university. He organized the university into 5 colleges, 3 divisions, and a high school. He also handpicked the men to lead those colleges into the future. The colleges were the College of Commerce and Business Administration, the College of Education, the College of Arts and Sciences, the College of Applied Sciences, and the College of Fine Arts. The divisions were the Extension Division, which becomes Continuing Education, the Graduate Division, and the Research Division. The structure was in place to begin realizing Harris's aspirations for BYU, but now the real work began. So for Harris, the first step was to get the university accredited. He felt like this would be a good benchmark for how the university was doing academically. And so he approached 4 accrediting bodies with varying degrees of success. He first approached the American Council on Education, and they told him, we're not an accrediting body. You get accredited and we'll add you to our list. So then he approached the University of California, Berkeley, which at the time was one of the accrediting agencies, and they looked at the school and said, yeah, nope, we're not going to accredit you at all, and didn't even bother to continue conversations with him. So then Harris approached the Northwest Association of Secondary and Higher Schools. They sent a visitor, and they decided to accredit the university as a college in 1923. So we were recognized as a college. And a sidebar, we are still accredited by the Northwest Association of Secondary and Higher Schools. We've been accredited by them for years and years and years. At the same time, Harris also approached the Association of American Universities, and they sent a gentleman to review the school, and his recommendation was that BYU not be accredited as a university. Harris was extremely disappointed that they weren't accredited as a university, but he recognized and realized that getting accredited as a college was an important first step in becoming the great church university. The accreditation visits, both of the Berkeley visitor and of the American Association of Universities, revealed a number of problems. And Harris was not surprised by any of this. He knew that these were issues. Among the issues pointed out were that BYU's admission requirements were not stringent enough, that the library wasn't good enough, there was no clear distinction between undergraduate and graduate courses, and there were too many freshmen on campus, not to mention too many high schoolers. In the late fall of 1925, Harris was asked by Adam S. Benyon, who was the superintendent of church schools, to put together a report. That report was called A Program for Brigham Young University. And in it, Harris outlined what he felt were the university's greatest needs. It reflected his thinking as well as the results of the reports from the accreditors that had declined to accredit the university. The greatest needs were familiar. As Harris wrote, he said, we need improved faculty, more scientific equipment, and more books in the library. I think every librarian wants more books in the library. The most pressing problem was the quality of the faculty, a problem that Harris had recognized in 1921 and he had already begun to deal with. Harris targeted faculty recruitment as the best place to start and initiated efforts to ensure that new faculty would meet the standards of the accrediting associations. This meant that all new faculty members had to have at least a master's degree. Harris also realized that the qualifications of the existing faculty needed to improve as well, and so he established a sabbatical program to allow them to upgrade their educational qualifications, and he encouraged them to go get additional degrees. And both of these programs were really successful in increasing the educational caliber and quality of the faculty. The problem of adequate scientific equipment was one felt keenly by President Harris, who was a scientist himself. Although the American Association of Universities report had declared, quote, the equipment is adequate, Harris wanted better equipment, and so he worked diligently and creatively to improve the quantity and quality of scientific equipment available to students and faculty. In his program for Brigham Young University, Harris pointed out that, quote, the modern institution must have the apparatus of the modern world. He strongly suggested that the next half dozen years should see large sums of money spent to bring departmental equipment up to standards. And later in the report, he pled with the Board of Education to increase the university's annual appropriation from $200,000 a year to $300,000 a year, gradually over the course of 6 years. Harris felt that an increase of this magnitude would make it possible gradually to bring the department equipment up to where it should be, as well as ensuring that the university could continue to improve its faculty and physical facilities. Unfortunately, this was the wrong time to be asking the church for money. The church was in a poor financial position, and so they were unable to increase the university's appropriation at all during most of the 1920s and 1930s. What this meant in practical terms was that Harris had to scrounge for funding for laboratory equipment, which for him, unfortunately, remained adequate rather than improving. Strengthening the library had been one of the main goals of the university from the beginning of Franklin Harris's administration. Harris felt that, quote, the library is the heart of a university. And he realized that Brigham Young University would never be successfully accredited as a college, let alone as a university, without a strong library. Harris began his efforts by petitioning the Church Board of Education for funds to build a library building. He was delighted to learn in August of 1924 that funding for a building had been approved. The new library building was completed in October of 1925, and so the library building, the Heber J. Grant Library, is celebrating its 100th anniversary, and the building was named after Heber J. Grant. The building was 2 stories high and contained office space and classrooms, as well as the closed stacks housing the library collection and a large reading room. Simultaneous to getting a building, President Harris worked to improve the collection that would be housed in the new library building. In November of 1921, the Faculty Library Committee reported that they would make a concerted effort to increase the number of volumes to 20,000 during the year by the end of the year. By February of 1924, they had exceeded their goal, and the library boasted over 35,000 volumes and around the same number of pamphlets. To put that in context, we have over 4 million volumes in this library. Harris and the university community both agreed that the improved library collection and the new library building were successful additions to the campus. They also agreed that the enhanced library was bearing fruit as the scholarship of both students and faculty steadily improved. With the new library and its improved collection, the upgraded educational qualifications of the faculty, and the slowly improving quality of the laboratory equipment, President Harris was ready for another go-round with the Association of American Universities, and he reapplied for accreditation in early 1928. In November of 1928, BYU was finally accredited as a university. While Harris was successful in getting the university accredited, he was not successful in completing his envisioned building program for the university. Harris felt that every growing institution must have a building program, and he felt that BYU's building program needed to include 1, a library, 2, a thoroughly modern science building, 3, a gymnasium, 4, a women's building, and 5, a classroom building to house such subjects as English and history. Only the library building was built during President Harris's administration because of the financial situation of the church. Franklin S. Harris's foresight and planning, though, laid the groundwork for the successful expansion of BYU's physical plant in the 1950s and the 1960s. By changing the focus of the institution from solely producing teachers for the church's educational network to enabling students to become leaders in the arts and sciences, government, and academia, President Harris gave new focus to BYU and ensured that it would always have a continuing purpose in the church's educational network. Equipping students to take the lead in solving the world's problems and producing teachers for the church's seminary program were not the only things that President Harris did that enabled BYU to cement its status as the flagship of church education. He also succeeded in getting the school accredited on a static budget, proving that the church could afford to operate a successful university. Accreditation was the result of Harris's efforts to strengthen the educational qualifications of the faculty and his reorganization of the academic structure of the university. It was also directly tied to Harris's successful campaign to construct a library building. President Harris's thoughtful program for the Brigham Young University illustrated the ways BYU could meet its full potential and convinced church leaders that maintaining a church university was both achievable and desirable. His vision of the university's potential as the great church university and his actions to make that vision a reality put BYU on solid footing. Franklin S. Harris resigned as president of Brigham Young University in 1945 to become president of the Utah State Agricultural College, returning full circle to where he began. Though church leaders appreciated his efforts to strengthen the university, they also felt that his quest for academic excellence needed to be tempered by refocusing on the spiritual dimensions of education. President Harris had informed the university's faculty about his decision to accept the offer to become president of Utah State Agricultural College in late 1944, which gave the Board of Trustees an opportunity to further strengthen the relationship between Brigham Young University and the church. The board asked the Church Commissioner of Education, Franklin L. West, to put together a list of individuals to be considered for the presidency of BYU. West compiled a list of prominent Latter-day Saint academics, all of whom had doctoral degrees and college teaching experience. In many ways, it was who's who of educated Latter-day Saints. But while educational background was important, the board was most interested in the candidates' attitudes towards the church. West went out of his way to gather this information for the board, writing letters to close associates of the candidates and their local church leaders. West was confident that he had put together a quality pool of candidates who could strengthen the university spiritually and continue to build it academically. It's an understatement to say that West was surprised when the board decided to appoint Howard S. MacDonald as the university's fifth president. MacDonald had not been on West's list. West was not the only person surprised by MacDonald's appointment. Howard MacDonald himself wrote in September that, quote, "The appointment to this position during the spring term came as a great surprise." MacDonald was a graduate of the Utah State Agricultural College. Let's go back. And had later attended the University of California, Berkeley. He began his professional career in California, working for the Unified School District in San Francisco for a number of years. He had barely returned to Salt Lake City in 1944 to become the superintendent of the Salt Lake City School District when he was summoned to a meeting with church leaders, specifically J. Reuben Clark Jr. At the meeting, President Clark informed MacDonald that, quote, "The first presidency was looking for a man to take the presidency of Brigham Young University. He asked me to accept the position." MacDonald asked for a week to think over the opportunity, and he accepted on March 12th of 1945. MacDonald was selected as president of the university not because of his educational qualities, but because of his background as a stake president, and because church leaders believed that he could bring a strong religious emphasis to the school. They also believed that MacDonald would be more willing to accept guidance from the board than his predecessors had been. MacDonald accepted this responsibility and worked diligently to augment the university's spirituality. Like his predecessors, MacDonald felt that the academics were important to the university, and he wanted to provide students with an excellent education. He wrote to members of the Salt Lake City School District that, quote, "My new position as president of Brigham Young University will not take me very far from Salt Lake City, and my great ambition will be to train competent teachers for Salt Lake City and other school districts of the state." MacDonald also immediately began to work with the Board of Trustees to develop a building program that would allow the university to accommodate the expected influx of students resulting from the passage of the GI Bill in 1944. And MacDonald's building plan builds off the one that Franklin S. Harris had prepared. On September 12th of 1944, the board authorized President MacDonald to prepare plans for the growth of campus. However, the board was still concerned about the percentage of church resources being dedicated to the university, and after approving the construction of a science building, they voted in 1947 to, quote, "proceed with the construction of the science building, doing only the minimum amount of work that would make it possible occupancy of the building." And so the Iron Science Center is that building. While MacDonald's appointment signaled the church's commitment to the university's spiritual emphasis, church leaders also remained committed to building a strong academic program at the university. They were determined to have an institution that integrated the secular and the sacred in meaningful ways. And one of the charges that they gave to MacDonald was to develop a culture that would do that. And he immediately took a number of steps to strengthen the university's culture. Understanding the university's unique mission, he instituted moral worthiness interviews for potential students, proposed that ecclesiastical units of the church be established on campus, and strongly encouraged students and faculty to attend university devotionals. His actions were a direct response to the vision of the Board of Trustees. Most significantly, MacDonald implemented procedures to better ensure that the faculty who taught at Brigham Young University firmly believed in its mission. MacDonald knew that church leaders wanted faculty who could, quote, "be trusted to instill faith in the hearts of students and colleagues." So he began asking those leaders to interview prospective faculty members and to report back on their worthiness. Elder John A. Whitsoe met with a prospective faculty member by the name of Hugh B. Brown and said that, quote, "he is a good Latter-day Saint who can be trusted." The practice of having general authorities interview prospective faculty had become so routinized towards the latter end of MacDonald's administration that he developed a form letter to introduce general authorities to the faculty that they were going to interview. The letter was addressed, "Dear Brother," and a typical example read, "This is to introduce you to Mr. Robert J. Kest, whom I am considering for a position in the speech department at Brigham Young University. Would you please have an interview with him in regard to his testimony of the gospel, and report to me in writing how you consider him for a position here at the university?" MacDonald understood that faculty played an important part in maintaining the spiritual environment that the Board of Trustees wanted at Brigham Young University. And he believed that worthiness interviews were important in helping to identify individuals who would spiritually and academically strengthen the campus. MacDonald also recognized that the students themselves played an important role in maintaining the spiritual environment of the campus. He reported to Bishop Floyd J. Griffiths that, quote, "We have not made any specifications for scholarships for the coming year, only that those selected are worthy students and good Latter-day Saints who will profit by a college education." MacDonald tried a number of different strategies to ensure that students were appropriately contributing to the environment. He reported to prospective student Bruce B. Peterson that, quote, "Not only do we maintain that smoking and drinking should not be maintained on campus, but all students who come to Brigham Young University should live all the ideals of the church. In fact, all new students must present a recommend from their bishop before they come to this institution." By September of 1946, MacDonald had developed a character recommendation, which eventually evolves into the ecclesiastical endorsement. And this character recommendation was required for every student who wanted to attend BYU. He wrote Commissioner West explaining the need for the character recommendation, stating that, quote, "We want people to know that this is a church institution, and that the young people here have the highest ideals. We do not want people here who have no desire to conform to the standards of the church." MacDonald also wrote to the presiding bishopric asking, quote, "When the meeting of the bishops is held at the quarterly conference, if it is possible, I should appreciate having 3 or 4 minutes to explain the character recommendation. I feel that bishops and stake presidents of the church should feel a great responsibility in sending students to Brigham Young University. This is a church institution, enabled for the benefit of the members of the church. We only want students here who are willing to live according to the standards of the church." The spiritual qualifications of the students were not the only thing MacDonald was interested in. He also wanted students who were academically qualified, since faculty and students at the university were to pursue academic excellence. Wesley P. Lloyd, who was Dean of Students, expressed this best in a letter to a bishop. He wrote, quote, "We are especially interested in all young men of the church who are making outstanding records in their high school and junior college work. We feel that Brigham Young University is an excellent place for them, and that they in turn can do much for the university and eventually for the church." The establishment of branches on campus in the late 1940s was one of MacDonald's most significant accomplishments. In 1947, President MacDonald and faculty member Golden Wolf recommended to church leaders that regular organized wards should be established on the campus of Brigham Young University. MacDonald and Wolf wanted to provide students, especially military veterans, with opportunities to learn church governance and to deepen their spirituality. They also hoped to strengthen the relationship between the church and the university by creating formal organizational ties. Church leaders supported this concept and decided that organizing branches on campus made more sense than organizing a ward. MacDonald recollected that church leaders chose to establish branches because they provided students with leadership experiences that would allow them to serve in the church after they graduated. MacDonald felt that there was, quote, "something significant about that. We'll give them a branch and have elders be branch presidents and counselors and so forth." The first branch was organized in June, and a second branch was organized in August of 1947. MacDonald was convinced that this experience was a success, In an oral history, he remarked that, quote, more students were developing a religious attitude by having the branch. Both branches, the unmarried students and also the married students and the little kiddies, were being taught, so it had a great influence. In addition to giving students leadership opportunities, the campus branches accomplished several different things, including solidifying students' connections to the church and building their spirituality. The branches also had the potential to influence the faith of the faculty, since they interacted with the students and participated in their church activities. This connection and its importance were made explicit very early on when Golden Wolf was called to serve as president of the Provo East Stake, home of the newly created campus branches. Student participation in wards and stakes on campus has become one of the hallmarks of the BYU experience. Classrooms used for teaching secular subjects become places of worship on Sundays, which helps to infuse the campus with a connection between the sacred and the secular. Sunday worship was not the only sacralizing element of campus culture. University devotionals date back to the founding of the institution. Short daily devotionals were inaugurated by Carl G. Mazer and continued by Benjamin Clough Jr. and George H. Brimholm. Under Franklin S. Harris, devotionals went from being held daily to twice a week. Church leaders recognized the value of devotionals and encouraged MacDonald to continue holding them, which he did. In fact, church leaders felt so strongly about the devotionals that they often gave the addresses themselves. President MacDonald was keenly interested in having church leaders participate in devotionals. In 1946, he wrote to the first presidency saying, quote, I am most anxious that the students of Brigham Young University know the presidency of the church and the general authorities. I would like them to feel your spirit and to know of your great testimony. The first presidency agreed with MacDonald and spoke often to the student body and faculty. Christian Jensen, who was a faculty member charged with making the arrangements for the devotionals, wrote to Commissioner West in 1938 inviting him to speak at one of the devotionals. In his letter, he detailed the purposes of the devotionals and mentioned some of the church leaders who had participated. He wrote, quote, during the present year, we are devoting these programs to a study of the leaders of our church. The addresses are both biographical and spiritual. We think it very desirable that our students should be given a knowledge of church leaders by our general authorities. Up to the present time, President Grant, President Clark, and Elder Albert E. Bowen, and Bishop LeGrand Richards have appeared on our program. Tomorrow, Elder Melvin J. Ballard will be our speaker. Devotionals continue to be an important part of campus culture at BYU. Church leaders, university leaders, and faculty have the opportunity to share their religious beliefs with students and to demonstrate what it means to be successful disciple scholars. Religion classes were another important part of campus culture that continues today. While faculty are expected to excel in their chosen disciplines and to bring gospel insights into the teaching of their secular subjects, church leaders also consider it important that students learn the gospel of Jesus Christ. So classes dedicated exclusively to religious topics are a core part of the university's curriculum. These classes have a long history and date back to the early days of Brigham Young Academy. University leaders and faculty were well aware that, quote, parents send their young people here for a lot more than academic training. There is a fine spirit here which is desirable for any young person, whether he is academically inclined or not. There is a religious education curriculum from which these young people can profit, and most parents want their children to have the benefits of it. MacDonald wasn't below using religion classes as a selling point to students who were considering studying at BYU. In fact, he wrote one student that you will, quote, find an excellent offering in subjects related to your major field of interest and an opportunity to study courses in religion. The dean of students told another prospective student that, quote, all students attending the university are expected to study courses in religion each quarter. University leaders wanted the unique nature of BYU clear to prospective students, and they wanted them to participate in religion classes. Branches, devotionals, and required religion courses formed the backbone of Howard McDonald's administrative efforts to keep a campus culture that valued the sacred and the secular. But other elements of campus culture were important as well. Students actively participated in social activities, and returning military veterans established an honor code to enforce academic honesty. President McDonald highlighted these parts of campus culture to a prospective student, writing, quote, "Our assemblies, our religious services, and our rich offering of various student organizations and activities will supplement your academic life in a way that will amply repay you for the genuine efforts which you will focus on your education." Through the creation of this campus culture, McDonald was able to successfully attract faculty and students who were willing to uphold and defend the church's vision for the university. Their willingness to abide by church standards and to work to illuminate the secular through the sacred strengthened the university's connection with the church. The elements of campus culture that coalesced under President McDonald continue to be present on campus today. While McDonald successfully accomplished many of the aims outlined by the Board of Trustees, he also came into conflict with the board in other areas, including finances and decision-making. McDonald wanted to facilitate the growth of campus in order to accommodate more students, and he was continually pushing the Board of Education to increase funding for the university. The board remained extremely concerned about the state of the church's finances and was not willing to give BYU more money. McDonald and the board also clashed on finding the appropriate balance between the sacred and the secular at the university, and who should determine what that balance should be. McDonald had had complete control to make and implement decisions with the Salt Lake School District and found it difficult to adjust to a situation in which he had to consult frequently with the board before taking action. These conflicts were a major part of why McDonald chose to leave the university in 1949. Leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints value education, both academic and spiritual, and the important role that it plays in shaping young people. This is seen in the steps that those leaders took in the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s to strengthen the academic status of the university and to tighten the ties that bind Brigham Young University to the church. These actions were aimed at helping the church establish an institution that mixed what they saw as the best elements of the modern secularized university and of faith-based institutions, and still impact the university and its relationship with the church today. The 1920s, 30s, and 40s were a pivotal era in the history of Brigham Young University. The actions taken by church leadership and by Presidents Harris and McDonald built on the foundation laid by previous presidents Carl G. Mazer, Benjamin Clough Jr., and George H. Brimhall, who had each grappled with how to appropriately balance the sacred and the secular. Leveraging lessons learned and actions taken, President Harris, McDonald, and the board diligently worked to create a lasting campus culture that would enable the university to successfully find a middle ground between secularized institutions of higher education and faith-based institutions focusing solely on building spirituality. Their decisions and actions laid the groundwork for the university's dynamic growth in the 1950s and 60s under President Ernest L. Wilkinson. The culture they established, a culture that puts a premium on the interconnectedness of the sacred and the secular, continues to influence the course of Brigham Young University. Thank you. And I am happy to take questions. Yeah. Yes and no. So I have been interested in Franklin Harris and Howard McDonald since I started here at BYU, and I got interested because I work in a library and I wanted to know the history of the library. And investigating the history of the library led me to be more interested in those two gentlemen. So I have written on both the founding of the library, on accreditation, on McDonald. So parts of it are new, most of it's from other places. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. So, no, he does not stay here at BYU. He goes to California to become president of one of the universities in California. And I want to say it's in the Los Angeles area, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, he leaves here to go to another university. A couple of reasons. I mean, one, he's clashing with the Board of Trustees, but the other, the University in California offered him a higher paying job. And so, yeah. That's a good question. BYU has had the reputation of being BYWoo since the 1920s. And so it probably brought more people into close proximity and gave prospective matches an opportunity to see each other in a different setting than classes. I don't know if it actually increased the number of students getting married. Yeah. So there is a great centennial history that was put together by Ernest Wilkinson, and I say great in the sense that it's got a lot of great information in it. Wilkinson was a lawyer, and he writes like a lawyer, so it's very dry. But it's got a lot of really good information in it. So it's called The First 100 Years. It's a 4-volume history, a lot of information there. And then I leveraged the university archives. We have the presidential records of Franklin S. Harris and Howard McDonald, as well as the personal papers of Franklin S. Harris. And so I spent a lot of time going through their personal records. Went up to the church history library to look at some of the church educational systems records related to the university. Yeah. Yep. Any other questions? Yeah. $1923. So when they're accredited as a college, it's a recognition that they were on the same plateau as other colleges in the country. What Harris really wanted to be was a university, and so that's why he works to build the library. So they needed to improve the library. He needed to be able to improve the faculty qualifications. They needed to improve the scientific equipment. They had to have another person come back. In fact, the accreditor comes from the University of Chicago, and he spends a week here. And he goes over every inch of the university and spends hours talking with Harris about the potential. And when he's convinced that they're on the right track is when Austin Robertson recommends that BYU be accredited as a university. And what that does is being accredited as a university allowed them to be listed on the list of American Association of Universities, and it also facilitated students' ability to transfer from BYU to those universities. So prior to getting accredited as a college and then a university, you had to go and petition for your credits to be taken from BYU to another college. There was not kind of an agreement that, oh, you graduated from a university, so we're going to accept these credits. It was a case-by-case basis, and it made it really hard for students that wanted to do graduate work leaving Brigham Young University to do that. And so that's one of the drivers for Harris. But yeah. Yeah. It is. So it's Benjamin Clough who changes the name from Brigham Young Academy in 1903 to Brigham Young University. It's entirely aspirational. We are primarily a K through 12 school at that point. In fact, we're primarily a K through 12 school until the late 19-teens. And the college department isn't even established at the university until the late 1890s. So devotionals were already on campus. So he scaled it back to once a week, but what he wanted were the church leaders to come down. So prior to that, Harris, Mazer, Brimhall, and others had given short daily devotionals, but had been the university president giving them. And Harris McDonald wanted leaders of the church to come. And they apparently wanted to do that because he was highly successful in getting them to come down and speak to students. Any other questions? Well, thank you for coming. I hope you will take an opportunity to go and visit the exhibit, learn a little bit more about the university's history. We appreciate the time that you've taken today. Thank you.